My name is Ashley. I live alone in a small house I rented just outside the city. I liked the quiet. The neighbors were distant but not unfriendly, and the streets always seemed calm at night. I worked for home, so I barely went out. Most of the time, it was just me and the sound of my keyboard. It was supposed to be a safe life, simple and uneventful. I wasn't the type to get into trouble. The biggest issue I had in my daily routine was forgetting to order groceries on time. But all of that changed the morning I found the first package waiting at my door. At first I thought I had ordered something late at night and forgotten about it. I wasn't drinking, but maybe I'd clicked something by mistake. The package had my name, my address, everything correct. The tape was still sealed, the Amazon logo printed cleanly across the cardboard. Inside was a sweater. Not just any sweater, my sweater. The exact one that had gone missing from my laundry basket a week earlier. The second package arrived 2 days later. I froze when I saw it sitting on the doorstep. It was heavier than the first one. I carried it inside, locked the door, and opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, were my missing running shoes. They looked cleaner than when I had last worn them, but the laces were tied in strange knots. With the shoes came a folded letter. The handwriting was crooked, like someone forcing their hand to stay steady. The letter said how much they liked the way my feet moved when I walked around the house. It said they wore my shoes when I was sleeping, just to feel close to me. I almost threw up. I hadn't even realized the shoes were missing until that moment. I told myself it had to be a mistake, maybe some sick prank. I thought about calling Amazon support, but how could I explain it? Someone was sending me my own belongings. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside felt louder. I turned all the locks and double-checked the windows. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. I felt watched. 3 more packages came during the following week. My toothbrush, a pair of underwear I thought I had misplaced, a framed photo of me with my parents that I kept on the nightstand. Each one came with a letter, always describing how they had used the item. The letters weren't romantic. They were obsessive. They described smells, textures, how my hair looked in the morning light. The tension grew every time I opened the door. I waited by the window to see the delivery guy. He was young, maybe late 20s, always polite. He wore the uniform, carried the scanner, and drove a standard Amazon truck. I asked him once if he knew who was sending these things. He looked at me blankly, shook his head, and said he didn't have access to that kind of information. But the letters were becoming more personal. They mentioned things I hadn't noticed. The way I touched my cheek when I was nervous. The way I left a lamp on in the living room at night. The exact time I usually showered. The thought of someone watching me inside my own home made my chest tight. I stopped turning off the lights at night. I kept the blinds shut. I barely ate. The fear was constant, like a weight pressing on me. One evening, I heard the familiar knock at the door. Another delivery. My hands shook as I opened it. The young delivery guy stood there, holding a medium-sized box. Behind him, half hidden by the truck, someone else was standing. He wasn't dressed like a driver. His clothes were filthy and his face was disfigured, twisted as if burned or scarred. His eyes were wide, unblinking, locked directly on me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The delivery guy smiled casually, handed me the box, and it turned slightly. That's when the man behind the truck took a slow step forward, holding something in his hand. A knife. I slammed the door shut, my whole body shaking. My heart hammered so violently, I thought I would pass out. Through the small window, I saw the man starting walking toward the house, step by step, dragging his foot slightly, knife glinting in the fading light. The delivery guy began pounding on my door, shouting that I should let him in. He sounded desperate, like he was about to cry. I hesitated, but the sight of the scarred man getting closer pushed me to unlock the door. I pulled him inside, and together we shoved the door shut just as the man reached the porch. I reached for my phone to call 911. My hands were trembling, but I managed to unlock it. Just as I was about to dial, the delivery guy grabbed it from me and smashed it against the floor. The phone shattered, the screen splintering into pieces. I backed away, staring at him in disbelief. His face changed, no longer polite or friendly. He started laughing. It was a sharp, broken laugh filled with amusement at my fear. He told me the man outside wasn't real danger, just a homeless guy he had paid to scare me, part of the performance he had been planning for weeks. He leaned closer, his voice lowering as he said he was the one who had taken my things. He described how he enjoyed being in my house, watching me sleep, using what belonged to me. He said he had been inside more times than I could count, and I hadn't noticed once. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. He followed me slowly, savoring each step like a predator enjoying the chase. His eyes scanned the room, pausing on me, locking me in place with their intensity. I bolted down the hallway, running into the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. I locked it and pressed my back against the thin wood, my chest heaving. He began hitting the door. Each strike made the frame shake, the wood groaning under pressure. I could hear him laughing between impacts, mocking me, telling me how much fun he was having. The banging grew louder, faster, until cracks started forming around the lock. I scanned the bathroom in panic. Nothing useful, just a razor on the sink. My hands shook as I pulled the blade out of the cheap plastic holder. The banging grew unbearable. Then the door split open. His arm reached through, then his shoulder, forcing the wood apart. The door finally burst open. He stood there, breathing hard, his smile twisted and wild. I gripped the small razor blade and lunged forward, slashing at his neck. The blade sank just enough to cut deep. He screamed, stumbling back, clutching his throat as blood poured between his fingers. His eyes widened in shock, but I didn't want to see more. I shoved past him and ran through the hall, out the front door, and into the street barefoot. When the police finally came, they found blood in the bathroom and on the hallway floor, but the man was gone. The truck, the uniform, even the shattered phone had vanished. It was as if he had disappeared completely, leaving only the blood behind. I never went back to that house. I packed what I could and moved in with my parents 2 towns away. I couldn't sleep in a place where I felt his presence everywhere. The police told me the uniform and the truck had been reported stolen months earlier. No one could identify the man I described. They said it was possible he had been pretending as a driver for weeks, maybe months. Every time I hear the rumbling of a delivery truck outside now, my body freezes. Even living with my parents, I don't answer the door unless I know exactly who it is. Packages pile up sometimes because I won't touch them.
My name is Daniel. I run a small YouTube channel where I test weird products and mystery boxes. Nothing big, just a few thousand subscribers. I do it mostly for fun. Sometimes I get sponsorships, but it's never been more than a hobby. One night I was browsing Amazon looking for something new to unbox for a video. I found a mystery box listed by a seller with almost no reviews. The description was vague, just said, "Authentic surprise, not for the faint of heart." That kind of thing always catches clicks. I bought it. It wasn't expensive, and I thought maybe I'd get a broken gadget or some fake collectible to laugh at. The package arrived 3 days later. Plain brown box, no branding, no return address. I set up my camera ready to film an unboxing. At that moment, I had no idea how much trouble I had just invited into my life. When I opened the box, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not strong, but metallic, sharp. Inside was a mass of dark hair tied together. At first, I thought it was a wig, maybe some cheap Halloween prop. I lifted it out and felt how damp it was. My fingers came back sticky. Red stains covered my hand. I dropped it on the table. The camera was still rolling, pointed at me, but I forgot about it. I stared at the hair. It wasn't a wig. The strands were attached to pieces of flesh, small chunks dried and cracked. At the bottom of the box, there was a small black device. I recognized it instantly. A GPS tracker. My stomach turned. I felt like someone was in the room with me, watching. That night, I sat in silence with every light on. At 7 p.m., my doorbell rang. Just one press. I didn't open it. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there. The same thing happened the following night, and the next. Every evening at 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Always one chime, always silence outside. I stopped recording videos, stopped answering emails. I couldn't focus. My body was tired, but my mind never shut down. I kept replaying the sound of that bell. On the 7th night, I didn't hear the bell. Instead, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A man's voice spoke, calm but heavy. "I have your sister." I froze. My sister is 9. I almost shouted that he was lying, but before I could speak, a series of photos came through on WhatsApp. My sister, crying in a car seat, tied at the wrists with plastic zip ties. "I don't have any money, but please, I'll do anything." The man chuckled. "I don't want money. I want you to give me what you already started. Skin and hair, same as the box. Cut it yourself." My throat closed. I begged him not to hurt her. He let me hear her voice on the line, screaming my name. Then the call ended. Minutes later, my mom called. She was panicking, asking if I'd seen my sister. She went to pick her up at school, but she wasn't there. That confirmed it. The man wasn't bluffing. The police came after I'd called them. They took my statement, looked at the box, the hair, the tracker. They didn't promise much. No leads, no optimism. The photos came from a burner number. They told me to stay calm and wait, but how do you wait when your sister's in a stranger's hands? That same night, another WhatsApp message arrived. A new number. A voice note this time. "You failed, but I'll give you another chance. Start now. Record it." My hand shook as I set my phone down on the table. He wanted me to cut myself on camera while he watched through the call. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and held a pair of scissors. My scalp throbbed before I even touched it. The man was on the call, waiting. "Do it," he said, "or she loses another day." I pressed the blades into my skin, right above my forehead, and squeezed. The sound of hair crunching mixed with skin tearing. Blood ran down my face instantly, dripping into my skin. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would break. I tried to stop, but his voice hissed again. "More! Cut deeper!" I forced the scissors further, tearing out a chunk of hair with flesh attached. My vision blurred from the pain. I dropped the piece into a plastic container. The man finally ended the call. I sat on the bathroom floor, dizzy, blood soaking my shirt. My scalp burned like fire, every movement pulsing with pain. But it wasn't over. Another message arrived. "Box it. Send it. Address is inside the package." At the bottom of the original box, hidden under the flaps, there was indeed a folded paper with an address scrawled in a black marker. An abandoned industrial park across the city. I wrapped the piece of myself in plastic, shoved it into the box, taped it, and drove in silence. The address was deserted, only broken windows and cracked pavement. I left the box where he told me to. On the way back, my phone buzzed again. "Good boy. She'll be home soon." I sped home, barely breathing. Hours passed like years until finally my mom called. She was crying. My sister was back. We rushed to see her. She was unharmed, at least physically. She told us someone had picked her up early from school, a man she didn't recognize. He took her to a theme park, bought her food, let her play games. Then he drove her home and left her at the front door. Before leaving, he leaned down and told her to tell me something. She repeated it word for word.
He said to tell you hello.
Hearing that knocked the air out of me. He wasn't finished. He wanted me to know he could walk right into our lives whenever he wanted. The police questioned her, but she didn't have any details. He never showed his face clearly. No license plate. Just a man who seemed normal, calm, even kind. Until the end.
My name is Craig, and I never thought selling knives online could put my life and my family in danger. I was just a small seller on Amazon, moving boxes of kitchen knives from a supplier to customers who wanted something affordable. It was routine, boring, and safe, or at least I believed it was. Most buyers left no feedback at all, and the few that did usually mentioned shipping times or packaging quality. I thought the worst problem I would ever face was a lost package or a return request. Things changed when I received a review unlike any I had seen before. It wasn't about customer service or the sharpness of the blade for cooking. The buyer complained that the knife bent when he tested it on thicker material. The wording was cold, calculated, and far too specific. His username was cut deep enough, and something about it froze me. He didn't ask for a replacement, didn't even want a refund. He just stated that the knife failed and he would be in touch. At first, I tried to dismiss it as some twisted joke, but then I started noticing little changes around my home. Packages delivered to my porch were cut open and resealed. Not stolen, just violated. The seams of the cardboard were cleanly sliced, not torn by hand. My wife Claire thought it was porch pirates trying to scare us off, but nothing was missing. It wasn't theft, it was a warning. The silence of those nights made me restless. I heard gravel crunch outside my window, heavy steps that stopped and stayed for too long. When I opened the blinds, there was never anyone there. I wanted to believe I was imagining it. Deep down, I knew I wasn't. The real message arrived in a package that wasn't from Amazon. There was no return label, no tape from a warehouse, just a plain box left directly on my porch. Inside was one of the very knives I had shipped weeks earlier, but this was no longer clean. The blade was bent and the metal stained with something dark that had dried into thick streaks. The wooden handle was cracked, like it had been smashed against something unyielding. Alongside it was a note written in rushed, blocky handwriting. It read, "Not deep enough. Refund not accepted. Talking soon." I kept that knife hidden in the garage, unable to throw it away, but terrified of leaving it in the house. Claire asked about the box, but I lied, saying it was a return. I could feel something spiraling out of control, and admitting it out loud would make it real. The next few nights were worse. Our dog barked at the same corner of the yard until it lost its voice, and every time I stepped outside, I felt watched. I began locking every door twice, keeping lights on in every room, but none of it mattered. The fear wasn't outside anymore. It had followed me into every corner of the house. When I checked my Amazon seller account, I found a new message. Short, blunt, and terrifying in its simplicity. Face to face, soon. It happened on a Wednesday night. Claire was upstairs folding laundry while I finished some shipping labels in the kitchen. A knock rattled the front door, so forceful it shook the frame. It wasn't the polite tap of a visitor. It was the pounding of someone who already owned the space they were demanding to enter. Before I could react, a voice seeped through the wood, calm, steady, and chillingly deliberate. I want a refund. I froze in place. My legs wanted to move, but fear weighed them down. Claire shouted from upstairs asking who it was, but I couldn't answer. I inched toward the door and glanced through the side window. That's when I saw him. He was standing perfectly still, holding one of my knives. His face was stretched into a grin too wide to be genuine. His eyes opened too far, unblinking, scanning the house like he had been living in it already. He tapped the blade against his thigh with a rhythm, like a metronome counting down. I shut the blinds in panic, but the pounding grew louder. Then, silence. For one brief second I thought maybe he left. The sound of shattering glass ripped that thought away as the kitchen window exploded inward. He climbed through with terrifying speed, landing on the floor like he had rehearsed it. Claire screamed from the stairs, but he reached her before I could. His hand shot around her throat, pulling her down the steps with brutal control. The dull blade pressed against her face, dragging just enough to leave a faint line without drawing blood. He smiled, his teeth clenched tight as if the grin was locked in place. "This is what you sell? This toy? I used it, and it failed. It bent. Do you know what happens when tools fail? People lose faith. People die sloppy. You ruined efficiency." His voice rose and fell without logic, swinging between calm explanations and sudden shouts. Every word came out like a performance for an audience only he could see. Claire struggled, gasping for air, while I collapsed to my knees, begging him to stop. He dragged her closer to me, crouching so we were all at eye level. His expression twisted from amusement to rage in an instant. "Look at her. Look at your product. If this knife had been made correctly, she would already be silent. But no. It bends. It resists. Do you understand what you cost me?" He pressed the blade harder against her cheek, and her eyes filled with tears. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. All I could do was plead, promising money, begging for her life. He didn't flinch. The tension inside the room was unbearable, like every second was balanced on the edge of the blade against her skin. He tilted his head, staring at me with eyes that didn't blink, and then he began laughing. It wasn't joy or humor, it was the cackling of someone who found amusement in destruction. "You sell lies. You sit in this house with your little business and your neat packaging, but you have no idea what your tools are used for. I used them. I tested them. They failed. And now you fail." He shoved Claire into my arms, only to slam his boot into my ribs before I could catch her properly. Pain shot through me as I collapsed, coughing and choking on my breath. He crouched beside me, grabbed the envelope of cash I kept in the drawer, and spread it out like he was grading an assignment. "Pathetic. You think money fixes failure? You think bills can sharpen a dull edge? No. Money is meaningless without reliability. Refund means acknowledgement. Refund means apology. You don't even understand your own business." His voice cracked into a scream as he waved the knife inches from my face. Claire sobbed behind me, and I couldn't shield her. My entire body shook as he pocketed half the cash, leaving the rest scattered on the floor. "I'll take the refund. I'll take travel expenses, but I'll also take your reputation. The world will know this knife is worthless." He spat on the floor and kicked me again, leaving me curled on the ground, gasping for air. His last words echoed like a death sentence. 1 star! And then he was gone, walking out the back door as if he owned it. Minutes passed before I could move. Claire clung to me, shaking violently, her face streaked with tears. My rib burned every time I breathed, but I forced myself to crawl to the phone and dial the police. When the officers arrived, their flashlights cut across the house, shining on broken glass and scattered bills, but there was no trace of him outside. I gave them everything I could remember, his height, his face, his words. but the way they looked at me made it clear they didn't understand. To them, it was a home invasion, maybe a burglary gone wrong. They didn't understand the performance, the obsession, the reason behind his visit. After they left, I returned to the kitchen. My laptop was open on the table. I hadn't left it that way. My Amazon seller account was on the screen, and a new review had been posted. It was 1 star. Product bends, doesn't cut deep enough, seller incompetent, avoid at all costs. It has been 2 weeks since he invaded my home. Claire barely sleeps, and when she does, she wakes up screaming. I haven't closed my eyes without seeing his grin, his eyes, the way he held the knife like it was more important than our lives. I've suspended my Amazon account, and we don't live in that house anymore. We don't even go near that place, and we never will. This story is based on the case of Todd Kohlhepp, a serial killer and sex offender known for using his Amazon account to leave sinister and disturbing reviews on products he purchased, many of which were related to his crimes. In 2016, police arrested him after discovering a woman chained in a metal container on his property in South Carolina. Upon investigation, it was revealed that Kohlhepp had murdered 7 people between 2003 and 2016. He appeared to be a successful man. He worked as a real estate agent and had a degree in business. However, he had a criminal record dating back to his youth for sexual assault. He was sentenced to 7 life sentences without the possibility of parole.